In this update, we're tracking two large storm systems, one for today into tomorrow, the second one further south, along with two cold fronts starting on Thursday into Saturday. So, we're going to break down the details for you in this update. Take a look at the satellite picture this morning. We can see this powerful upper level low that we've been tracking for several days now is highlighted over eastern portions of Colorado. In fact, on the back side of that, that is actually some snow starting to fly across that region. But you can see where that low level jet is starting to pump in, and that's where we have convection right now over areas of Iowa and then further north as we head into South Dakota, back into Minnesota. That's the beginning stages. Would likely be some larger hail and possible tornadoes, especially as we head into this afternoon. So here's the overall setup right now. I can actually put the storm reports for the last 24 hours. We had that a dry line set up across West Texas that dropped some sporadic hail last night, but further north you can see these red areas. That's where we did in fact have tornado warnings, and there were several there into portions of Kansas heading into Nebraska, and numerous wind reports. There's the warm front lifting further north, and as it does, that will be a renewed threat as we head into tomorrow. There's the activity yesterday afternoon that had a severe thunderstorm watch associated with it back towards Virginia that left some quarter to likely some golf ball size hail in some places within that region. But the main concern is where this upper level low is currently right now, heading northeast out of Nebraska. And there's the lift mechanism with that low level jet starting to kick in within that region where we do have several severe thunderstorm warnings already in place. And that will only intensify, I think, as we head into the afternoon. So here's the latest update. They really haven't changed it this much from the Storm Prediction Center. Does in fact highlight that tornado risk, especially as we head into this afternoon. Mainly the bullseye is right there in Iowa, right around the triple point, especially in the Des Moines region, southeastern portions of Iowa. They could take the brunt and have the likelihood of the most probability of seeing or tornado. And one of those or two of those possibly could be a strong tornado. But don't let your guard down, even in the brown shaded areas. That is a 5% probability of an isolated tornado within the Omaha region, back into the Kansas City region, there into Springfield, further south into Memphis, all the way to Paducah, into St. Louis, back into Indianapolis, and even further north as well into Milwaukee. I think even the Madison region has to be concerned possibly of a tornado and some larger hail associated with it too. So definitely the atmosphere, the updrafts are intense enough. We've already seen this come to fruition. So you do have that probability, the greatest concern where they do have that enhanced risk, mainly highlighted from the Kansas City region, Omaha, especially there into Des Moines, southeastern portions of Iowa, and heading into Springfield. They definitely need the rain. They've been going under a significant drought across this region, but they definitely don't need the severe stuff. But it's going to be pretty bumpy as we head into the afternoon time frame. And as this moves through into the evening, I think it'll eventually impact the Chicago region as we head towards the evening. So here's the setup on the radar depiction. This is about noon, so you can actually see the banding, this low level jet really pumping in, and especially northern portions of Missouri, and they're in Iowa. They are in the favored area, the target area where they could see some of that larger hail, and an isolated spin up or two is definitely not out of the question. So definitely be on high alert. And then further north, as you head into Minnesota, at least the southern portions of it, and that will swing over into Wisconsin as we get into the evening. And as it does, this is the setup heading into like 6, 7, likely towards 8 o'clock. You should start to get impacted within the Chicago region, there in more areas into Wisconsin. Or this further north is just likely a heavier rain threat, and this will swing in through Minnesota and back on the backside through North Dakota and South Dakota, and then swinging the leftovers across Nebraska. Notice further south into Missouri and back, especially as you get further into Arkansas, definitely a little bit more isolated. The scattered activity along that boundary, not as widespread. So But this will all transition and head eastbound. So as we head into tomorrow, this is your Wednesday. There's the setup. We do have a slight risk, definitely not nearly as intense as what we have seen last night and we'll see today. But nonetheless, we could be seeing some borderline severe storms. Some of those could be looking at some quarter size hail, definitely some gustier winds, and an isolated spin up tornado, especially within this yellow shaded area into the Indianapolis region, back into Cincinnati, possibly Columbus, even up into Cleveland, into Detroit, and even into the Grand Rapids region. Is definitely not out of the question. A little bit further or less instability further south into Paducah, down further south into the Nashville region, into Huntsville, with a marginal risk. So if you break this thing down for you over the next 2 days, you can actually see the instability. The instability on the HRRR kind of high resolution guidance is really where these darker shaded colors, that's where they have the most intensity of the supercells, right there into that Des Moines region, southeastern portions of Iowa. But then that will swing into Wisconsin, Illinois, back through Missouri, further south through Arkansas, and that will impact areas of Tennessee, back into Kentucky, through Indiana, and going into Ohio. Notice how far north it actually goes. Can't even rule out areas into Michigan, seeing some of those severe storms and then a little bit heavier rain further north, and definitely a little bit more isolated as you swing further south. So if you break down the Elicity tracks, this is where the greatest updrafts are. So this is where you could possibly see some of that larger hail, if not an isolated spin up. This is where the areas are likely going to be rotating right there, and they're right into the Iowa region. They have to be the most highest alert. And then western portions of Illinois, northern portions of Illinois, and then southern portions of Wisconsin there, that's the favorite area. But even further south into Missouri, back into Arkansas, still an isolated risk. But once you get into Wednesday, this is your Wednesday threat heading into Ohio there, especially central and northern portions of Ohio have to be on the greatest concern of that larger hail, possibly a spin up tornado or two. And that will feed, yes, back into the Pennsylvania region. They've been getting hit hard numerous times, and they looks to be heading into that Wednesday night. It could be likely over your area again, even further south into portions of West Virginia. But as we head into Thursday, we are going to be talking about the first initial front that we are going to be coming in. I put the dew points on there to kind of show you where that front is going to be, mainly highlighted as it pushes from northwest to southeast. It's not the full front. I think that one comes in on Saturday. But the first initial front will bring a renewed threat for additional lift and more storms, likely severe, as we head into Thursday. Really highlighted across Illinois, Missouri, and Arkansas, and portions of Texas there as we head into Thursday night. So right now, the Storm Prediction Center has that slight risk for severe storms that are going to be popping along that cold front, coming out of St. Louis, back into Paducah, into Memphis, into the Little Rock region. And I think those will actually backbuild further south as we get closer into that peak heating time frame, likely after 4 o'clock. This is another one of those daytime events, a lot like what you're going to be seeing today in the Iowa region. But look at the rain, folks. This is the first initial point of interest with that secondary large storm that we're highlighting that's really going to get its act together across Missouri, back into Arkansas, and that could even backbuild into portions of Texas. Look at the snow that is going to be flying in Canada. Yes, that is actually snow in Saskatchewan, there in Manitoba, right? That's a first initial front, and it's actually going to be a fairly good-sized cold front for late April standards, and you're going to feel it. And look at the temperatures heading into Thursday morning. Look further north. Those are widespread freezing conditions in much of Canada there, Montana, back into Iowa, into Idaho here, into Wyoming, and that only gets into areas of Colorado. And then even further south, where you did have that instability into the Ohio Valley, you're going to be waking up in the 40s as you head into Thursday morning. And there's the warm sector further south, and that's where we have the instability in the first initial stage. But yes, this is a stronger cold front, folks. The secondary push really comes in, and look at those darker anomalies, those well below average temperatures further north, and that will eventually start to head southbound. And this cold front actually makes it all the way down through the southeast, believe it or not, by the time we head into Sunday. So we could even be talking about some record low temperatures. Actually, look at that, widespread 20s showing up on the map for Saturday morning into Montana, through the Dakotas, back through Nebraska, right? I mean, even the freezing line gets even to Kansas. So you're going to be able to feel this front in a big way. I mean, for late April standards, definitely going to be feeling those cooler conditions. You obviously will be needing the jacket up here. Not going to be feeling like the third week of April, that's for sure. And that will only continue to push further south, and it's going to bring that renewed storm threat. So we have the storms on Thursday, and I think that front just kind of sits there, right? And then you'll have that kind of overrunning type setup that should bring additional rain and heavier rains through Arkansas, areas of Oklahoma, and portions of Texas there. And I think that only intensify as the front stalls further south, going into the southeast, areas into Louisiana, back into Mississippi, back into Arkansas again. They're in southeastern portions of Oklahoma, and they're into eastern and central portions, northern portions of Texas, with that slight risk for heavier rainfall. That would likely lead to some isolated flooding, especially once we're looking at some of these precipitable water value indexes, highlighting those numbers of 1 to 2 inch per hour rain rates. And there could be like a little MCV possibly trying to form, a little mesoscale convective vortex system that comes out of this area with that front just kind of sitting there and spinning for a couple of days. That could bring out another convective complex, and these are these big time copious rain mounts. We could be looking at some isolated areas, and flash flooding could be a concern, definitely as we head into Saturday night. That's a little bit ways off, but we'll be fine tuning this in future updates. But you're going to be feeling this cold front, guys. Yes, everybody gets in the action besides areas out west and much of the southwest. You don't really get any rain this deal. You get all the warmer anomalies. You miss out on the cold front. You kind of miss out on everything. So, but areas that do get the cold front and all the instability are areas central and eastern 2/3. Look at the anomalies with that front stalling out by Sunday afternoon. Look how far south it gets, folks. It's heading to Florida. Right? At least it's going to try. Not going to quite make it to Florida, but it's going to bring those cooler anomalies and a chillier rain further south for the weekend with that isolated flooding concern. So if we break it down for you over the next kind of 7 days of these these storm complexes, yeah, notice the bullseye out west, high and dry under that ridge of high pressure. Pretty warm conditions. You missed out on the cold front altogether. You missed out on all the rain opportunities. Everything is essentially going to be east of the Rockies and really setting up shop with 2 larger storm systems. The first one highlighted over the plains, Nebraska, into South Dakota, especially there in Iowa. There's their beneficial rains for those areas back into Minnesota, through Wisconsin, into Illinois, into Indiana, as well as in Ohio. Then you have that secondary boundary further south with those 2 cold fronts, right? So you have the 2 cold fronts come through Thursday, additional lift overrunning mechanism on Friday, and then it kind of sits and stalls on Saturday, producing some heavier rains for Oklahoma, into Texas, into Arkansas, into Louisiana, and back into Mississippi, there into areas of Tennessee over between now into that Sunday. And everybody gets into that cold front by the time we head into Monday morning, folks. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. If you like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button and catch me next update where I protect you before and after the storm.